So, welcome to our first Grant Masterclass of 2025. This is actually a new series we launched in October where we invite accomplished grant seekers from our Instrumentl community to share their best practices and strategies. And today, like I said, we're joined by Monica Coleman from Eureka College to explore all things grants in higher ed, education settings more broadly, and then the nonprofit world. If any of you here were at the summit back in September, Monica is a familiar face to you, and I'm so excited we finally got her back on our stage. I emailed her honestly like a couple weeks after the summit, and I was like, Monica, when can we get you back? And we finally did it. And for any of our first timers, I know there's quite a few of you here in the room today. Instrumentl is the most loved all-in-one grants platform for prospecting, tracking, and management, and we currently help 4,000 nonprofits and grant consultants save time in finding and applying for more grants. This event is about 60 minutes long. It's going to be super hands-on as we move through the presentation. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat box. Either myself or my colleague Ryan will answer them right then and there, or if it's a question for Monica, we'll make sure it gets to her. This event is being recorded. You'll get information on how to access the recording via email tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. And I know we're all busy, working hard, so thank you so much for being here, first of all. If you need to step away at any point, feel free to do so. We will be right here. Like I said, you'll have the recording to see anything you missed. But I do want you to stick around till the end because in classic Instrumentl fashion, we will be raffling off some coffees today. So make sure you stick around so you can enter in that. And that's not all you have the chance to walk away with. Let me know in the chat, give me a thumbs up or a yes. If your organization, your university, what have you, could use a couple more good fit grant opportunities or funders on your radar to kick off the new year. John says yes. Yes, everybody says yes. That's right. If you're in nonprofits, you can always use a couple more grants on your radar, right? So we want to do our best to equip you not just with knowledge and insights, but also with actionable resources. So, like I said, when you roll up your sleeves in today's workshop, you'll be able to walk away with a brand new list of funders and active grant opportunities that have been custom matched to your projects, your criteria. And you can take that back to your leadership or your team today. And then that's going to be obviously on top of all of the strategy and tactics that you'll learn from Monica. So I've been chatting for a while. Let me wrap this up. It's kind of backwards order here, but also let me introduce myself. I'm Nia. I'm one of the events and community managers here at Instrumentl, and my job is to develop helpful and educational events like this one for our Instrumentl community. I've actually come from the nonprofit world, so prior to this, I worked in rainforest conservation and research, and so favorite part of my job is being able to spend a couple hours every week with you all, with a bunch of nonprofit professionals in this fun setting. And our expert in the room today is Monica Coleman, Director of Foundation Relations and Grant Writing at Eureka College, a private college in Illinois. This is where she was able to raise over $7 million in grant funding in her first 2 years in that role. So Monica's going to tell us all about what it took to make that happen, along with other nuggets of wisdom. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Monica.
Thank you. Well, I hope all of you are doing well today. I don't know about the rest of you, but there is a extreme temperature thing where I'm at right now. I'm actually at my house. A lot of people are remote. So burr, I hope all of you are staying warm. So yeah, that's actually one of the probably the most recognized building on our campus. It was built in 1857. Again, I'm glad I'm home today because this building's probably super cold right now. So I started back at Eureka College back in 2021. I basically inherited a blank slate. I had the opportunity to kind of grow the grants culture at the college from my start there. I found out they did have a grants person like 7 years before me, and they were only there for a few months. So it was kind of one of those opportunities where I was like, all right, what do I need to do to kind of build this from the ground up? And that's kind of what I'm going to talk to you about today. I know a lot of us on the call, I saw the polls that a lot of you are from higher ed. So I know that in different higher education institutions, there's different organizational charts, different sizing probably matters. I've met people who have multiple people on the grants team. So hopefully my tidbits today can help you in some way. But mine was I started from the ground up with just me as the grants person. So hopefully I can give you some feedback and ideas that you can use in your own organizations.
And before we actually dive in to Monica's presentation, I want to ask you all. So let me know in the chat box when you started your role, did you inherit a grants system? So if you joined an established organization, was there already a process in place, some pre-existing funders, long-standing practices? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of no's. Some yeses. Some people inherited some practices, but some people are really starting from the ground up. So this is helpful to know. I mean, obviously you're going to get a mix in every room, but like Monica said, her experience was really starting with a blank slate. Um, so let's turn it back to Monica to dive into the presentation.
Thank you. So the first thing is you need to know where you've been, and not even you specifically, but your organization. Where have you been to know where you want to be? So in my case, I came from nonprofit also, and I was lucky enough that doing grants in my nonprofit, there was actually a really good base for the funders. So I didn't have to work as hard, I feel like, to find the funders and the grants and the things we needed to do. There was some of it, but it wasn't as extreme as it was as here. You can go to the next slide. You really need to take stock of what's in place. So when I actually during my interview process for this job, I was asked what would be the first things you would do in the first 90 days. And I said I would make a list. I needed to see where we've been. So what kind of CRM does your institution have? Or is there one? And if there is any of the grants of the past like in there? Is there spreadsheets? Is there a grant system that you use to prospect? Like any information you can gather, you can move ahead. Exploring what might be in an existing portfolio or pipeline. Like I said, is anything existing when you come in? In my case, both of these answers were no, pretty much. We do have a CRM, but I found out very quickly that most of the grants weren't in there, or foundations weren't even in there, which was kind of a problem. I had a lot of access to some paper files, but not as helpful as you would think, right? Because there's a lot of things in my institution is very old, so there was a lot to go through. So it would have been easier if it was all in the CRM, but you know how that goes. The other thing is any evaluation you can do on historical goals, performance, of where your institution's been. I have talked to many people who have been in my position who have come in and at least there's some information of what they've gotten before. And I did a lot of that kind of research when I started to see where we've been. I did have I'm going to touch on this in a little bit, but I did have the opportunity to meet a lot of people who were involved in some of the past grants they might have had. But I kind of needed to know where we've been to know where we're going to go. So you can move to the next one. So getting to where you want to be, all of you need to be on the same page so that you know you can head in the same direction together. There's a question here. Are your colleagues on the same page about 2025 goals?
Yeah, and folks, let us know again in the chat. There's going to be a couple times where we want to hear your stories in the chat. So let us know, are you and all your colleagues on the same page? Do you feel like you're aligned on organization priorities, on next steps, maybe with leadership or with the board? Is there consensus across your entire organization on what's happening? And I
I
can see,
laugh a little bit, but saying no, yes.
yeah, for the most part, yes, says Amber, which is amazing. A lot of nopes, some yeses. If anybody, as we answer these questions and share our stories, if you all want to share any specifics, feel free. Like I said, the chat box is yours to share your stories. I'll hand it back to Monica.
Sure. So I want to preface this with when I started, I think I still have it. I was given a one-page piece of paper that said, here is where we want you to focus. And honestly, out of all the things on that list, I think one of which is still carrying on in my third year, but most of it has changed around and switched. Um, I totally empathize with you that are like sort of or no. It does take time. I will say working on a blank slate, there's also the whole big job of kind of like shifting and making people think about the grants culture in general. I've discovered that a lot of people either their eyes glaze over when you talk about grants, or they are like, oh my gosh, I need this, 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 and this, which isn't quite uh which is great that they have a list, but also it's kind of like level setting expectations too. But one of the key things for all of this, by the way, is collaboration. It is like the number one thing um, that I emphasize. So obviously you report to someone in your organization. For example, my supervisor is the VP of advancement. So he's on a leadership team, has the strategic goals. Like that's where I kind of get most of my directive. And then also the board of trustees, who should all be on the same page. But you do have a lot of other people on campus that have feedback. So it's kind of a two-way street where you're kind of going back and forth. So hearing from your leadership and other stakeholders, like what are the priorities? What are the number one things? A lesson I learned actually from my last role at my last job with nonprofit was it's great if we can help everyone. Like, for example, if somebody's like, I need this $2,000 piece of equipment and I need a grant for it, awesome. But I'm working on, multi-million dollar grants also. So it's kind of like level setting those expectations of I can help you maybe get started on that project while I'm working on these others. Kind of being that setting expectations piece, right? Like I can help you in this manner, but I'm going to be focusing on these, strategic goals because, the dollars that are over $1 million, it's probably pretty important to help with. You can go to the next slide. This is a thing that I did, and I'm so glad I did. I did a person tour when I started at Eureka, and now I will say I'm 3 years in, and there's still a handful of faculty I haven't met because they weren't there that day. But I basically, besides seeing where everything was on campus, I went around and met different people or made sure I made a list of people I needed to meet with soon off the bat that I'd probably have to talk to a lot, work with on a grant. Because they're the ones that you're going to want to have relationships with. And I don't mean just what can I do for you type of thing, but building a relationship with that person's super helpful because then later you can go back and say, hey, I'm writing this grant. Your department's going to benefit from this grant, from this, this, and this, but I need your feedback on what, things to write, things like that. And then also, like I said, level setting expectations, being honest about internal capacity. I am a grant person of one. I am on the advancement team, but our team's small because our college is small. Um, I did start an internship through, I have a whole, campus full of students. I did start an internship program a year after I started, once I got my feet kind of on the ground to kind of assist with this process, but it's still kind of, it's just me. Okay. So I'm doing the prospecting, the research, the writing, kind of starting people off if we get a grant with a project management piece, and making sure like we keep all those things in order. So sometimes when somebody asks me about a grant, especially if it's not on that list of what's the big priorities, is sometimes I'll say, hey, I can get you a list of grants you can apply for. Just let me know what you're going to do so I can keep track of it and go from there, right? We internally set like a limit, like other people can apply for grants, but they have to all go through me to make sure that we're not stepping on anybody's toes, that funder isn't, being asked for a bigger ask or just for tracking purposes, keeping track of things. And also just so I can have my eyes a little bit on it so I, know what's going on. You can go, oh, sorry. There you go.
All right. So another little chat box moment for you all. Let us know on a scale of 1 to 5. This is a juicy question. Think about your grant pipeline for 2025. So, funders you're evaluating, active opportunities on your radar, LOIs you're writing, or proposals you're getting ready to submit, any of that stuff. The pipeline as a whole, how confident are you that it'll get you where you need to be, that it'll get all your projects funded. If anybody puts a 5, I need you to email me because you're going to be our next webinar host. So if you put a 5, you're on the spot to lead our next workshop. But I'm seeing a lot of 4s, which is amazing. Some 2s and 1s, which is expected. Grant pipelines are hard to build and they're hard to sustain too. So I'll turn it back to Monica to talk us
Oh,
through that
yeah,
process.
I'll answer this actually on my own. When I started, the answer was 1. I was asked to make a pipeline and I would blindly did one, and I will say probably all the grants that I put in there, we did different ones. It's gotten easier every year. So I'm probably more of a 3.5, 4, depending on it just depends, right? So obviously your pipeline needs to have clear goals. Especially in the last couple years. My first year, I feel like the goal was to get my feet under me and figure out which grants to do just for that year, right? After that, I kind of had a need. I had a need. I needed to have like attainable goals. Like, what are we striving for the pipeline? You can, yeah. So, for example, how many grants are you going to apply for each year, knowing that not all of them are going to be funded, right? And how much are you going to apply for these? And what percent will be successful? Another level setting thing I had to do with the campus is I've did a little bit of digging to see what the average success rate was because I had no idea. And industry wide, it was between 10 and 30%, which sounds so low, but knowing what I know, and some of you probably know, not all the grants you submit get funded. Even in my last role, nonprofit, which my success rate back then was much higher because we were very specific on things that we did. It was never 100%, never. Even the ones we thought pretty sure gonna get, sometimes something happened and we didn't get that funding. So I think educating those on campus, building that grants culture of, hey, only 10 to 30% of grants are successful is a pretty good thing to say to people, just so they understand that, yeah, we can be hopeful. Sometimes the percentage could be higher especially if you have a good relationship or building a relationship with a funder. But it's just good to have that in the back of your mind. Um, and then for all of these, using SMART goals, my supervisor actually made our whole department make logic models and make SMART goals for each of our areas. So um, I I had already done, not the logic model part, but I did that part because it helps the others to see that aren't in fundraising necessarily or in grants, to see, what we have and where we're going. So um, and I don't know if those of you know what the SMART goal acronym means, but you could Google it. Having that there as a baseline to know, like, what are you going to strive for each year? Even if you're like, I have no idea, just shoot an arrow. Like, just take the chance. It doesn't have to be a high number. If you have any historical data to kind of build off of, you could go off that. You can go real low and hope to to get to a certain point. But it's easier, like I said before, to build on what you've done. So now that I'm in my 3rd year, it's much easier for me to kind of set a baseline and how many we're going to apply for and how much we're going to ask for and all of that. So I built some multi-million-dollar pipeline, and you can too. Um, I'm not. I feel like I know this is called a master class, but I feel like sometimes I feel like I just followed the direction of where it seemed to make most sense to me. And this is where it went. I know some of you have probably felt the imposter syndrome because I definitely felt that when I started at Eureka. I was like, do I know what I'm doing? I guess I do. Um, it just when you've been in the grants game a long time, it just seems like, oh well, this easy, but I know not everybody's in that situation. Uh, but I can say that Instrumentl, and I'm gonna geek out a little bit. When I came in to Eureka College, they were using, I don't even remember what platform, but it wasn't the greatest. So I convinced them to at least use the one I used at my last job because I was familiar with it at least. And I accidentally stumbled upon Instrumentl looking up some trainings like this one. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like grant prospecting except on steroids. It's amazing. There's the list of funders and the list of grants at the same time. And I can like take better notes and track it better. And that's kind of how I got into making my pipeline a little bit more stronger, because before I felt like I was kind of just reaching and being like, I think this might work, but this made it much easier.
Yeah, and so like I said in the beginning of the workshop, for anybody that represents a US-based 501c3 nonprofit, you'll have the chance right now to dive into Instrumentl because Monica's actually going to show us how she uses Instrumentl in her grants process. She'll walk us through her use cases and all that good stuff, and you'll be able to actually follow along. This is a totally free, no credit card required, no strings attached. You'll dive into the platform right now, and then you'll have 2 whole weeks to build a pipeline, find some grant opportunities, get started. And after those 2 weeks, if you're like, Instrumentl's not for me, totally fine. The goal was just to get you in there and get you started on the pipeline. So to get started, I'm going to put a link in the chat box. Make sure you click this exact link. Otherwise, you will not be able to access the workshop. So go ahead and click on that. And I want to specify once more that Instrumentl is tailored to US-based 501c3 nonprofits or consultants working with such organizations. So if you're an international organization, Instrumentl is not going to be the best tool for you just because it so revolves around the US grant landscape and US funders. But we found that folks who work at international organizations can still get some actionable strategies here, even if you can't actually go into Instrumentl. So go ahead and click that. It's going to ask for some very basic information about you and your organization just to get you started. Go ahead and fill that out. If you've ever signed up for anything online, it's the same exact process here. If there's anyone in the room who used to have a trial and you'd like this opportunity to start one again, just because you know there's going to be new tips, new ways for you to try using it, I'm going to put another link in the chat. You can go ahead and fill out this form, and somebody from our team will get in touch with you within a couple days. For today, you won't be able to go back into your old trial, but you can follow along on Monica's screen. Once you've had a chance to fill out that sign up form, it'll bring you to a page that looks like this. This allows you to book time to talk with one of our grant advisors. These are people who are super knowledgeable about Instrumentl. They can tell you all about the features that are specific to what you want to use Instrumentl for, all that good stuff. But because we want to get you into the workshop right now, while you're here with us, you actually have the option to skip this call. So at the bottom, there's a little button that says skip. Nobody else has this option, only our workshop folks. So go ahead and click skip just so you can get into Instrumentl right now and you can follow along. And then you'll always have the option to circle back afterwards if you decide you do want to talk to one of our grant advisors. You can always go back and book a call with them. Ray, feel free to message me right here in the chat box about where you're stuck, and I'll try to walk you through. Anybody else who's gone through the sign up flow, give me a yes or a thumbs up in the chat when you've gotten to this stage, and I'll hand it back to Monica to go back to her grant process and her best practices. Ray, so I'll put the link again. Right here is, oops, that's the wrong one. Right here is the option to sign up for an Instrumentl workshop trial. So you can go into the Instrumentl platform right now while Monica's here, and you have the option to find some grant opportunities, start building a pipeline. Monica's going to show you how to get custom matched with grants for higher education or any other use case that you have. And you'll be able to walk away with, I don't want to promise you an exact number, but usually we see around 200, at least 200 active grant opportunities. And yes, Ray, you do need to click on start free trial. And I do see some thumbs up, so I'm going to turn it back to Monica to walk us through her process. If anybody else is getting stuck anywhere, feel free to message me in the chat and I'll try to troubleshoot you as we move through.
Thanks. Let me make sure I can share my screen. Allow. Hey, there we go. Go share. Okay. thumbs up if you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Yay.
You are good
Awesome.
to go.
Okay. So right now, obviously I have a lot of projects open because I've had Instrumentl for a while now. But this is this is kind of the first screen if you clicked on new project. And this is the project detail part. So I put in, because we're talking about higher ed right now, student success is probably a pretty high thing on a lot of people's lists to make sure, students can get through and graduate and retention and all that. If you have multiple people on your team, you can pick other people, but of course this is me. And then you can pick what project type matches and tracking. So we want this one because we want them to tell us what matches we have. And then tracking is only if you're tracking certain grants, which I can talk about later. So you push save. And then it'll ask you what kind of applicant type you are. So we are a nonprofit because we're private. We're also a college and university, which I click private. This is clicked on mine right now, and I'm just pointing this out. We also have a museum on campus. So if you're like, why does that clicked? That's usually clicked on ours because we have a museum. But I'm not going to click this one for today. Would you like to see grants specifically for faith-based organizations? It's up to you if you're associated with a faith-based organization or if that's the type of things you're looking for. I'm going to click no though. And then what areas does your project serve? So inside the United States, that's where we are. And we are in a specific county. Now, I have actually been asked this before. Like, we have students that come from all over the United States. This is for where you're at because some grant funders will only fund in certain states, counties, certain areas geographically. So you definitely want to click this in what county you're in. So of course I gotta go all the way to Illinois. And I'm going all the way down because we're in Woodford County. Confirm. All right, this is the part that you need to pay attention to. Selecting the fields of work. This is where you kind of need to figure out what types of things you want grants for. So you can either type in here in the search field or you can browse all categories. There is a ton. I recommend going through and looking at these. There's so many. Sometimes I start searching through word search just to make it a little easier, but sometimes if I can't quite find what it is, I'll go through the topics. So if we want like retention, whoops, let me see. Retention. Hey, look at that. Higher education, probably want to click that, right? I'm trying to think of other words. Persistence, success, sometimes student. Let's see. We've got that one done. I'm going to click this one too because we have a career center and college prep type things. You at least want to pick 2 through 5 of these topics. Just so it narrows it down a little bit for you. You can always go back and take one of these out, or there's a way to filter your searches, which I will show you in a moment. Push update. All right, so what size of grants are we looking for? I usually start 5 or 10, depending on the project. I'm going to say 10. And then no maximum, right? Why would we want a maximum? What will we use these funds for? So there's all these different topics here. If you need to know what they are, you can click here. Specific educational programs or projects. Restricted for specific programs or projects that are not research projects or education projects. General or operating expense. Don't know about you, but that's a hot topic for us too. Capital projects. We have a capital project going on right now, or training and capacity building. A lot of times I just click all these because, again, there's a way to filter these down in the search later. In case you're wondering what this is, exhibitions, which I'm not going to click that because we're not going to put on a public exhibit with this. This is for academic researchers. For this type of project, I'm not going to click on any of these, but you could if that's the type of thing your college is looking for. And what type of funders do you want to see grants from? I usually also click all of these because you can filter those out later, because why wouldn't you want to see all of them? Unless you're looking for very specific private funds or corporate funds, again, you can filter this out, and I'm going to show you on the next page how you can do that. So save and exit, and then we just wait for a moment, and it is pulling them up. And it gives you a nice job. I see a lot of questions. I'm going to let somebody else take those because I am not sure the answers. So I found 197 foundation grants, 50 corporate grants, 30 government grants. Let's go. So you made your first list of things, right? This is where you can scroll down and look at through each of these. Sometimes I like to do filters and say, maybe I just want, here, let's see the filter. Maybe I just want, if I scroll all the way down, just show me corporate. It'll show you all the different grants that are available right here. And if you already have Instrumentl, sometimes you might see this that says saved. It's because I have a lot of projects open, so it kind of shows which ones I have saved this to already. But you can go in, and if you go over to here to the right, you can look through the actual grant opportunity, which is awesome. You can kind of look through what it's for. Scroll down more. Eligibility, I always look at that first, right? Make sure, is this something specific that we could apply for at our college? And in eligibility, also super important. Sometimes I also go to the funder itself, and you can take kind of a little, it kind of does a summary of like their 990. You can also look at their actual 990 forms if that's something you like to do. But when I'm first looking through and making kind of a list of potential funders, I usually just stick to the actual grant itself. And whether or not I hide it from this project where I don't think it'll work or save it, you can put like notes, research this more later, or if you have help, like an intern, sometimes I'll put notes for her to go in and look through it more later. So just for fun, State Farm, I'll just put research more into this opportunity. Oh, I'm a terrible speller. Sorry about that. And then you can save it. And where that goes, in case you're like, well, where does that go when you push save? If you go right up to here and push tracker, it pulls it up right here so that you can see all the things that you've saved. And you can always go back in and click on it and see what we just looked at, the actual grant, the funder profile. It obviously shows that I've saved this on other places. But yeah, it also sometimes shows you other types of grants, and you can always click on them and see other types of grants that funder might have too. So if we go back to matches, you can always unclick that and show all of them. Sometimes I really like to research and dig around in here because I think it's really helpful to see, like, maybe I just want to see what they have for student retention and dropout, right? So it'll show all of these grants specifically just for that topic, which it'll show you right here. But if you leave it all, you can see all these different opportunities here that you can click on, save, hide if you don't think it'll work. There's also funder matches. So these are private foundations. It comes from their 990. And they might not necessarily have a grant open right now, or maybe they do granting, but they want to have a relationship with you first. You can always take a look through these and see if one of these would work. I think it's helpful too that right here it says giving rate to new grantees. Like it shows right there, like if the percentage is, 10% or higher, I usually try to take a look at them. But you could always save these. Like if you click this, I don't even know what this is. You can kind of see the same kind of things you would see on some of the other searching platforms of like what their grant ranges are. I always like the map because you can see like what states they've donated to, and it even shows you like how much and where. You can narrow it down. You can search for a certain organization. I just find it super helpful to be able to do that. So that's kind of how you get started.
Hey, Monica, can I throw in a question? So
Sure, throw in a question.
I'm collecting all your questions to bring up for our Q&A at the end, but we just got a question from Corey that feels very relevant to what you're talking through right now.
Sure.
So I just want to bring it up in case it's something you can show us right now. But Corey wants to learn more about how you use the 990 to access higher quality grants for your institution. So maybe how the 990 helps you evaluate if it's a grant that's worth your time.
Sure. Well, let's see here. Does this one have an identity on it? So I usually start with the funder profile first before I even go. I don't go into the 990s unless I really need to look up certain things more specifically, but I usually use it to see like what's the range that they fund. Like this is a pretty good range of median or average, and what types of things they like to fund. Which I forget if I can open this a little bit better here, or I'll just open this one. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I feel like I click things and my computer's being a little slow right now.
Sorry, I also put you on the spot
No,
totally.
you're fine.
So
Um, uh, like I usually like to see, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time. My computer. So
it's because you have your screen share on, and so it's
I know.
like all
So
compressed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So so right here on this, this is like from the map. It shows you like the purpose of what they fund different things for. Sometimes I go through here and like you can filter like the state. Sometimes I filter who they've funded near me, like in the state, or I look up the purpose of what they funded. And there's also let's see. Sorry, I like to like I forget where that's at. Oh, there we go. I like to see also like, do they fund new grantees if we've never been funded before? And this is what I was thinking of in my head. I'm like, where is that at? I like to see where they fund. If they fund education, sometimes that means we're a good fit or another type of topic. Um, it kind of just depends on a lot of different things. Like, do they fund a lot of places in my area? Do they fund a lot of types of places that are similar to ours in our area? And then are they friendly to new grantees? Usually also with especially these funders right here in the middle, these are ones that you kind of need to start a relationship with before you are more likely to get a grant, I would say. And when I say start a relationship, there's a ton of good instrumental trainings on this of like just making a quick call or an email to just ask about it. You just need to ask about their grant like process if they have a grant process. Sometimes too, I don't know if it's listed on here or not. So on the summary and also in the 990 more detail, you can find out who, especially if it's a local place, who is on their like employees, who's on their board. And sometimes you can make connections that way to see like maybe somebody on your board is connected to somebody on their board. And that could be kind of the open door too. So that's how I use the summary more and I only go into the 990 if I need like more detail of like specifics. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, and Kimberly had actually asked if there are templates within Instrumental, which there aren't. We linked our blog, which does have a bunch of templates that you can look at. But you started to touch on this. Kimberly was wondering some more intel on how you actually strike up those relationships, especially with foundations or funders that are not open to new grantees or are invite only, if you have
Sure.
any best practices there.
Well, my first one is check to see if somebody at your organization already has a relationship because that always makes it way less awkward if you're being introduced by somebody who already has that relationship. So, like my RVP of advancement, for example, has worked in other higher educations and nonprofits in his long career. He actually knows a lot of people already, so he's usually my go-to, but sometimes there's people on our board. So him or someone else on our leadership team can basically be like, hey, does anybody know someone at this organization? Because it just makes it a little bit less awkward, I'd say, to have that introduction. I have used some templates I found in Instrumentl, and I have some of my own just from me being in this for a long time, of just like an email introductory, just wanting to know more about their philanthropy and their giving practices, not even about the grants they have open, just more about that just to start the conversation. Usually it's a few conversations I'll say before I even try for it, depending on what it is. Um, but it's all about networking, I'd say first, and then the second it's more like finding out about their philanthropy practices and things about what they do. So
Yeah, and I feel like we've kind of gotten into the Q&A a little bit, so
that's fine.
I'll go ahead and ask a couple more questions just because you have Instrumental open. So if there's like anything
Sure.
you need to show, I feel like I might as well ask questions now. Folks, if you have any questions for Monica, throw them in the chat so I can bring them up. We have about 10 more minutes with Monica, so we'll definitely have time to get to your question. The next question I wanted to ask Monica is, earlier on, Amanda asked, how do we get our board more involved? Our org is stuck in the past in a lot of ways. And I think that's something that anybody, regardless of what type of nonprofit you're in, can relate to your board not being on board, being stuck in old ways. So if you have any strategies there, and we know that you've cultivated a totally different culture than the one that you walked into. So if you
Oh,
have anything
sure.
specific about board engagement, let us know.
Yeah. So here, I'll say this. It's still ongoing. That process is right now. And I get the whole, the old way, the new way. Um, I asked, and then also it was already on their like page. I asked if I could present at a board meeting just for like 10 minutes about the grant process in general. And it worked out because they hadn't had a grant person there in a long time or ever really. Um, and so I had a presentation I did of what it is, like what am I doing, right? So I had like I made these myself. I made like how do I vet a grant and what type of things am I doing and what here's like the priorities that we're focusing on right now. And then one of the things I have tasked them with back then, and then also it just keeps getting brought up, I feel like almost every board meeting, is we need their help to kind of get in, to be introduced to some of these foundations we might not have, a relationship with. Now, sometimes they come back with, oh, I know so and so from this foundation, and I might already have that established, which is totally fine. At least they're engaging, but kind of getting their buy-in of like, hey, you could help us get much farther if you could introduce us. Because most of the time, people on boards are on other boards, or we're on other boards, or they just know people. They're more interconnected, I feel like. So it's kind of like getting their buy-in of you could be so helpful for us if you could give us some introductions and um, help us get there. Now we're still working on this. I've had a goal the last 2 years of getting at least two new introductions, and um, I've gotten to the point where like I know someone, and then it's the getting them to like do the thing, like do the introduction. So we're still working on that, but I feel like kind of letting them know what's going on and the process instead of like someone on the leadership team just telling them, hey, here's what our grants person's doing and what's going on. Um, they can kind of have a, skin in the game, I guess.
And we have a quick follow-up here while we're on the topic of board.
Hmm.
Seems to be a hot topic for all you
Sure.
higher ed folks. What's your advice around board networking when you're in a university system? We're served by a board of regents that governs 12 different institutions.
Ooh, that's big. Um, I feel like you need to with your own, I don't know, like I know every college has different structures. So like whoever your supervisor is, maybe it's even their supervisor, like whoever's on the leadership team who probably goes to the board meetings a lot, getting meetings with them to kind of get into that system. It's kind of sometimes a multi-step process of like, who do I need to talk to get to where I need to go? Kind of like what I said before. Um, I think about everything in steps, like who do I need to talk to get to that point? Um, it's much harder, I would say. In my last job, I actually worked with like 5 different boards, same organization, but we had different boards for each like area. So that was a little difficult too, because I had to get in front of all of them, and it was hard at first, but it does pay off because once you meet with them at least once, conversations can begin happening, and I don't know, emails can happen, or even like a virtual meeting is helpful to kind of get everybody on the same page and get their help. There's a really good also article. I refer to this all the time. I think it's the shiny object syndrome or something. It's like in the blog somewhere on Instrumentl, because sometimes people want to chase whatever shiny grant they see, and it might not necessarily be the same fit. But I always think of it this way: even if they do that, at least they're trying to engage and get involved. So
All right. I hope if y'all have more board questions, throw them out there. But, ooh, okay, we have a lot of questions. Let's start with a quick one. Do you use a relationship mapping tool? And if so, which one?
I I do not. I do know that my team has one, but I think they're changing it, and I don't know. I'm sorry, off the top of my head, what it is. We've done a lot of changing of some of our platforms that we use for different things, so I don't.
All right, let's see another question. There's so many now, so let me just try to find one. Um, Rudolph asks, what are professional development opportunities for those in higher education concerning grants?
So I kind of fell into grants. Honestly, I started by having to write for my own programs, and then it turned in, I had a knack for it, I guess. It turned into me doing it for my last organization full time, and then now I do it here. Um, there's a lot of online classes. I can say that some are free, some are not free. I do know that there's like certifications people can get. I myself actually don't have that. I've been doing this a long time. So I do know there's some stuff out there that's free. I actually have a whole list of trainings that I send to my intern when they start so that they can kind of get caught up on like, what's a letter of intent? How do you search for a grant and things like that. So there's a lot of good free ones.
Awesome. And I mean, this is a start. This is definitely professional development, and we have a lot of folks in the chat who are in higher ed. I'll actually, at the wrap up of the webinar, I'll share a link to a LinkedIn post where we all can get to know each other and connect. So you can start to build a community of higher ed grant professionals if you don't
Sure,
have that already. Let me ask a couple more questions because we still have time and I want to try to get to more folks'
sure.
questions. Stephanie asks, is there a best practice for filtering out grantors that don't answer? We apply to a lot of orgs that only provide a mailing address to send an LOI. Many times there are no numbers, emails to follow up. So how do you make the call if a grant maker, I suppose, is worth your time?
Well, I actually have a couple. So I'm in my third year, right? There's a couple on my list I sent this year that there's nothing. I can't even follow up with them anyhow. They're off my list. I try a couple times. The thing is they don't want to be contacted. I feel like there's not a lot you can do unless you know somebody um, who can kind of get you connected, if that makes sense. So I don't really have a best practice for that because I come across the same thing, which is very annoying. At least say no, thanks, or something.
Yeah, we could always use a little bit more info from grant makers.
Yeah.
Kimberly asks, do you follow up with grants that are not awarded?
I do, at least by saying thank you so much for your time. I actually have a standard like email or a letter I send, or a thank you note even sometimes. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you probably have a lot of grants that you approve, blah, blah, blah. I always say thank you because I feel like that at least, I don't know, a lot of times the stewardship process of like just thanking a grantor for their time, maybe next time they'll remember that. Or sometimes if I have a number or a way to contact someone, I'll say, thank you so much. Is there any way I could find out more information about, it depends on the grantor, of course, why it's hard to ask the why didn't we get funded thing, because sometimes it might just be they had too many. But sometimes there's an opportunity you could ask, like, is there a way that we could partner in another way, or find out like maybe why you're, especially government grants, sometimes there's ways you can find out and you can tweak it for next time.
All right. And Patricia asks, this is kind of vague, so Monica, address this how you would like. But Patricia asks, can you show the calendar and task tabs if maybe it's not private and you can show us
Sure.
what that
Well,
looks like?
okay, so I'm going to preface this before I show you. I don't use this tool as well as I could. Okay. So I am actually in the process right now as we're speaking. I am getting the next, we're upgrading. Okay. So this system can integrate with a couple, I think, different CRMs. One of them is the one we have. That being said, I would love not to have to data entry twice. So I'm getting it for that alone. But there is, I don't even know. Um, this won't really show much because I don't have much on this tracker, but this will show like different things that you might have listed here. I kind of
Yeah, I can speak over this a little bit too. So the calendar and the tracker, the tasks tab, everything comes populated with like the ability to put in deadlines and assign dates and things. So it's like a calendar that's built into Instrumental. And so that's where that would be populated if you choose to use that. So a lot of folks use Instrumental strictly for prospecting. They just want to find active grant opportunities. And then a lot of people use it also for actually managing the grants. So it's totally going to be dependent on how you choose to use Instrumental. Like Monica said, right now she primarily uses it as a tracker for new opportunities. But if you do choose to use it for post award or for tracking and managing all of your grants, you do have the calendar and the tasks built in there to be able to do that quickly with it without having to go to, another app or a third app or a fourth one.
sure. So this, I pulled up my whole one just so something came up. So this shows like when they're due, but also if you have a task. So I use the task thing pretty a lot in here. This is like you can do these from the, I'll show you. From the tracker from what I showed you earlier, you can click on something. You can do it from that screen. You can make a task for whatever you would like. So you could, I don't know, call so and so. I don't know. Does it have to do with any of these? I usually click general, or sometimes put the due dates in. The great thing about these tasks are when you put them in, you get emails sent to your email like, hey, you got a task due in 2 days, or I think it's a week, 2 weeks, a week, 2 days. I usually pay attention when it's 2 days and then a day. Because I work ahead. Like I set things, tasks way before they're actually due and put a deadline and it'll like email you also. So that tasks, um, I actually don't use the screen very often. I just let my email tell me when I have something due. Um, but it'll show all the tasks you have. So like that, call so and so. I'm gonna come back to that probably next week and be like, who in the world was I supposed to call? Um, but yeah, you can see like all these different things I have, like apply, contact them. Right now, I don't have a ton in there. Again, I'm getting ready to upgrade, so I'm trying not to overload the system too much because I'm getting ready to put all this stuff in there. But I also put like this is due, like submit today or whatever, and it'll pop up here, but it'll also email you, which is how I remember. I do know that there's a way that you can set up a calendar and it can connect with your Outlook, because I tried that one time. I think it was through the Pro plan, which I want, and you can share it with other people so other people can be on top of things too. So
Yeah, we have a whole bunch of integrations to make your life
yeah,
easy.
it's
But
I'm getting ready to do all these things, but it's like I'm trying to get away because I don't know about some of you, but I'm working up an Excel spreadsheet that I made like forever ago, and I'm done. I don't want to do it on that anymore. I want to work on it through here. So
All right, Monica, we could listen to your tips and tricks for another 2 hours, I think,
I
but I have to let everybody go in 2 minutes and I have to let you go and get back to your actual job. So, first, nobody leave because I owe you all a raffle. So, everybody stick around for 2 more minutes. I still have you. But first, I want to say thank you to Monica. Uh, Huge shout out for one, helping us kick off 2025. This was such a fun, exciting workshop to start with. I know that those of you who logged into Instrumentl are walking away with a whole bunch of grants to explore. If you didn't log into Instrumentl, you have a bunch of tips and tricks. So thank you, Monica, for taking the time, for being so generous with your knowledge, your insights. It's been a pleasure to have you on our stage again. I'm putting a link to Monica's LinkedIn so you can follow her, stay up to date with um, anything she posts, any other workshops she does. And here's the raffle I promised you all. So, what you're going to do is you're going to go to this LinkedIn post that I'm putting in the chat box right here. And you're going to comment. You're going to let us know something you learned today or something you enjoyed, someone you met, whatever. Just leave a comment. I really encourage you to go through the comments and connect with the other people that write something. So that way you can grow your network of higher ed grant professionals, nonprofit folks. And we're going to pick 3 people to win coffee on us just from the folks who comment on that LinkedIn post. So go ahead, the link is right there. Save that, do that right after. And if you want to double your chances at winning coffee, fill out the feedback form. As soon as you exit out of this webinar, or as soon as I end it, there's going to be a little feedback form that pops up. It'll take you 1 or 2 minutes. Just fill that out. It helps us know what type of events you guys want to see in the future. And anybody who fills that out will get an extra coffee raffle entry. And finally, for any of our event regulars, we have a lot more coming up. So I'm putting a link to our new event hub. So from now on, every single event that we have coming up and every event that's been in the past all live in the same place. That link right there that I just put in the chat. You can go there to rewatch past events if you missed them. You can go there to register for everything coming up. We have a very fun February and March planned. Some of those events are already up there. You can register. So make sure you bookmark that. I want to see you all at our next event. And on that note, I want to thank you all so much for joining our first event of 2025. It's such a special way to kick it off with all of you. Like I said, I want to see you at our upcoming workshops. As always, please reach out if you have any questions, ideas, anything you want to discuss. You know where to find me. My email address is right there. And I want to thank Monica again for taking the time to be here. It was really a fantastic presentation, and we had so many thank yous in the chat. Everybody definitely really enjoyed it. So thank you, Monica.
You're welcome. Sorry we didn't have longer. I could talk about this stuff forever, I feel like.
I know we could have stayed here for hours, but alas, we all have to go back to
All
our
right.
real world jobs.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And I'll see you at the next one.
Thanks.